In 2016, the Lake Okeechobee discharges that happened right in the middle of our tourist season were a big wake-up call for us that we needed to get involved and take action on this issue. We witnessed the collapse of our fishery right before our eyes. Right where we're at now used to be some of the best seagrass flats we had for fishing.
We took a look at ourselves, or we asked ourselves a question, as fishermen, why we hadn't been involved in trying to fix these issues.
As we dug into this, we realized there was a massive water management issue in the state of Florida, full of corruption, and nobody was talking about it. Nobody was doing anything to fix it.
This problem was something that had been going on in the state of Florida for decades. We realized right then and there that the outdoor community needed a voice, or we were going to lose these places that we all love.
The fishing guides, the restaurants, the hotels, all of these businesses that relied on the water to make a living, they hadn't gotten involved because they didn't have an outlet to do so.
You know, initially Daniel and I honestly, somewhat naively, thought that this was something that we could take up this fight on the weekends in between running charters. And it became obvious very quickly that a problem of this magnitude was going to require our full attention.
Fast forward to 2018, the state of Florida was faced with an even greater water crisis.
Dead fish, sea turtles, manatees, and now dolphins washing up on shore along the southwest Florida coastline.
The releases from Lake Okeechobee continue to push more algae into the river.
And that's when we realized that this was about more than just saving our fisheries. This was a humanitarian issue. It was affecting everyone across the state.
The last 3 months, the business community coastally has been down 40%.
We have rental units on the beach. There was 1 week we didn't have anybody in any of our rooms.
If you're not emotional about this, something is wrong with your thought pattern of why you come here. There's a special place in Florida that everyone loves to come to for generations and generations.
If this goes away, just like Dave said, it's gone. Florida's gone.
For decades, Everglades restoration was missing something. It was missing the voice of the people. It was missing heart and passion. It was missing Captains for Clean Water.
Today, we're starting to see real change.
Because people are getting involved. We've changed the discussion from, is this a problem that needs to be addressed, to,
this is the problem, this is the solution.
And we need to hurry to get there before it's too late. We've spent the last 3 years visiting with people affected by these issues. We've helped carry their message to policymakers in Tallahassee and Washington. Our elected officials are beginning to realize they have to take care of these problems with a sense of urgency.
They're fighting for federal funding to fix the problems threatening our coastline. NBC 2's Jacqueline Beavis is live in D.C.
Lawmakers, scientists, and Floridians all in one place to discuss just that, how to restore and then protect our national treasure, the Florida Everglades.
These guys jumped in front of the bus. They put their life on hold for the rest of us so that we can keep doing what we do.
The value of these treasured places has been recognized for decades, if not centuries. People from all over the country and all over the world have come to South Florida to experience the beauty and magic of what we have here. Even some of the people that have helped shape this nation have recognized throughout history the value that Florida has to offer.
Prominent businessmen like Thomas Edison, we all know him, Barron Collier, Zane Grey, Teddy Roosevelt came here a lot. Their main getaway would be to come down here in the middle of nowhere for them and go tarpon fishing for as long as they could.
The people that have been drawn to this magical place, many of them have left legacies behind that affect every single one of us every day. And together, we're all writing the story that we will be remembered for. We have a great responsibility before us to restore the lifeblood of our state and protect our way of life. 50 years from now, we're going to be asking ourselves,
did we give it everything we had?
did we show up and make our voices heard?
Did we hold our elected officials accountable?
Did we stand up to the opposition and not back down?
Captains for Clean Water is our loudest voice, and it's being heard clearly by those who will make the ultimate decisions regarding the life's blood of our peninsula.
Really, at the end of our lives, are we going to leave this mess for our children, or are we going to be remembered as the ones who saved the Everglades? This is a fight that we cannot lose. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming here to Collaboratory, our new home.
Yeah, we definitely want to thank everybody, Offshore Sailing School. Can we stop?
There we go.
That's why Daniel and I are not in charge of the technology. No, yeah, it's funny. We've seen that thing way too many times, and it still gives you chills when you see what we all lived through last in 2018. But really want to thank you all for taking time out of your night to come here and visit with us and listen to the progress that's being made and the reason it's been made. Daniel and I are both born and raised here. Daniel kind of walked away from going to college to pursue his dream job as a fishing guide. I walked away from my family's construction company to pursue my career as a fishing guide and my dream job. And little did we know that would, we wanted to be outdoors and under the sun and not under fluorescent lights and really be able to kind of live each day with a different challenge in front of us. And we would have never guessed it would have led to us in an office under, LED.
Yeah, we have LED lights here. It's a LEED gold building, just a plug for Collaboratory. So.
But, we started out really as ticked off fishing guides, and also with a little bit of guilt that it's like, hey, I've born and raised here. I grew up on Sanibel Island, had a very successful career as a fishing guide and a tournament angler, and yet, was I like waiting for someone else to try to fight to save these resources and to fix the problems that we had seen and witnessed our entire lives. And I think 2016 was like kind of when a light bulb went off in our heads that things are getting worse progressively faster. And as people who are directly tied to the resource, rely on the resource, and have been given so much because of our resources, that if we didn't step up to try to fix issues, like who would? Who could we? Why would we expect anyone else to do that? So we really set out as a couple of ticked off fishermen, and anybody who knows fishermen, they're pretty stubborn, and when they get pissed, it's kind of like takes a while to stop us. But that led to us reaching out to the community, and we started kind of asking people, hey, why do you think this is happening? What do you think needs to be done? And we realized that if you asked that at that point in time to 10 different people, you'd get 10 different answers. Whose fault it was, what it took to get out of it, if you could get out of it. And our first thing we did was started calling some scientist buddies. Dr. Aaron Adams at Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, somebody we had worked with for many years to tag fish and help deliver data to his scientific team on fish movements and how that relates to habitat loss. We called him, we called a number of other scientists, and what we realized was there was a big group that had been trying to affect change and move the needle on this for 30 plus years. And they had a very valid, ecological argument that, look, these ecosystems are being impacted, these animals. You know, we're losing dolphins, sea turtles, manatees. But when Daniel and I first went to Tallahassee and shared those sentiments to our policymakers, we realized that up there, like, they might kind of understand that a little bit, but what they really understand is jobs and economy and numbers. And so we really kind of started to look at ourselves and the relationships we had in the outdoor industry. We started this to try to get the outdoor industry involved. We looked at, you know, our partners we had relationships with, like Yeti and Costa Sunglasses and, you know, Hells Bay Boatworks and SeaDeck, all these pretty big brands, and kind of asked them the same questions that we had asked ourselves. Like, this directly affects your business, and we need your help to protect and invest in the future of your business. And we got that support. What we didn't expect was the communities rallying behind us, that we realized that there was a ton of people out there that were kind of experiencing the same thing that Daniel and I were. We were, you know, felt like we're just a single fisherman, right? Single person. How can I possibly affect that change? Well, there was that same sentiment was throughout our entire community, that, you know, we wanted to see change. We needed to see change. We had to. But how can one of us, how can one person really move that needle? That set in motion just an unplanned, unexpected kind of snowball effect of the community being engaged. You know, if there was a silver lining, and I don't think you could even put it as a silver lining to the catastrophe that we all saw, but if there was any good that possibly could come out of that, it was that our communities rose up, spoke up, and realized that we are going to be vocal, and we are going to drive action to fix these things. You know, there was a plan, had been in place. It's been in place now for 20 years, 2 decades. Daniel was probably like still in diapers back then. He's pretty young. But you know, it was just, it had stagnated. We weren't seeing progress because the public wasn't there to drive the political will. Fast forward 3.5, almost 4 years now, we're seeing more progress than we ever have before. That's a result not of Daniel and I, not of our team. It's a result of all of you. It's a result of our communities across the state of Florida speaking up that we had to fix this. There's a plan, there's a solution, but it's going to take political will to drive it and advance it, and it's going to take all of us driving that will and creating it. So I'll let Daniel kind of briefly talk to you about the progress we've seen since we started, and go from there.
So the reason we started Captains for Clean Water, like Chris said, was because we saw drastic changes to our office, which is the estuaries here. The mouth of the Caloosahatchee River is where I grew up fishing. 90+% of the fishing trips I took as a young kid were pretty much, if for those of y'all that are boaters, the slow speed zone in the mouth of the river. We fished that area almost exclusively just because we had a smaller boat, and going much further, you're wasting your fishing time. And the fishing was so good there. There were so many oyster bars, so many seagrass beds, such clear water, that all my memories, my favorite memories as a kid, are watching snook on the long bar, on the Shell Point bars, and all of that labyrinth of oyster bars that we used to have. I'm 28 years old now, so when I started my career as a guide, I was 20, 21 years old. Those areas were gone. Where there used to be, some of the most healthy oyster bars and seagrass beds with a ton of wildlife around them, they're just not there anymore. And as a 20, 21-year-old, you're a lot more interested with, I think, making some money and going out and partying after. And that's kind of where my priorities were. That I never really, it was in my mind, but it was never like, why were there not, why are things different? And by 2013, we had another really bad round of these discharges. And then I saw even more destruction. And it's a lot different to look at the water once a week, every other week, and see this versus being out there every single day and depend on it for a living to pay your mortgage, to pay your truck payment. When you start seeing changes then, it affects you completely differently. And the discharges in 2013, we fished through them. It was bad. We didn't see the areas that were most impacted, all the seagrass that died, we didn't see them recover. And then again, it happened in 2016, even worse. So that was a big wake-up call for us, because it was in the middle of tourist season. It was in January, February. We had 40 to 60 trips booked for the month, running 2 a day most days, and they're $400 or $500 a piece for a charter. So it was a wake-up call. We couldn't even keep our bait alive at the Punta Rassa boat ramp because it was freshwater there, and we fishing for saltwater fish. So it was a really big wake-up call. We were all really upset. Had no idea what to do about it. So like Chris said, we started pitching a fit, reached out to all these scientists, and pretty much all of them, from FGCU, Bonefish Tarpon Trust, all these different scientists we knew, they're all saying, there was this comprehensive Everglades restoration plan that was passed in the year 2000. I was actually in 4th grade, so I did not wear diapers.
Still wearing diapers.
I wore diapers up until 3rd grade. So it was, it was supposed to be a 30-year plan, comprehensive Everglades restoration plan. We call it SERP. We're now 20 years into it, and guess how many of those projects have been completed? Yeah, 0. Pretty embarrassing. 2/3 of the way through, and none of them have been completed. And there were, when SERP was passed, there were parties thrown, everybody was celebrating. We thought we were there, but really we hadn't even started the race yet. And the reason, like Chris said, lack of funding, lack of political will. People aren't paying attention to these things, they don't get fixed. So, as we got more involved with Captains for Clean Water, we realized, we had a lot of people tell us right off the rip, you guys can't do anything to fix this. And they're absolutely right, we can't. It takes all the communities working together, the local governments, the state government, the federal government. It takes everybody. No single person will ever be able to fix these problems. In 2016 when we started, not much happened. In 2017, and of this comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, of SERP, there's 68 components. So in 2017, we decided let's pick the ones that actually provide the most benefit, the most ROI for our communities. And if you look at these 68 projects, a lot of them, reduce discharges by 2% or 5% or pretty small amounts. But if you take the Central Everglades plan, the EAA reservoir, that suite of projects, it cuts discharges by over 50%. Just 2 or 3 of those 68 components can cut about half the discharges for a couple $2 billion. The overall plan, $15-16 billion estimate right now. So we figured let's take a small chunk of this that can do the biggest amount of benefit, built in the quickest amount of time, and we went to Tallahassee. We worked with leadership. Senate President Joe Negron at the time ended up being the hero on this issue. He proposed a 60,000 acre reservoir to be built to cut the discharges. The sugar industry wasn't real happy about it. It ended up getting cut down to 33,000 acres. And then they decided they weren't happy with that, and then ended up getting cut down to 16,000 acres of taxpayer-owned land that we're going to build these projects on. And even with that passing in 2017, all the news headlines came out dead on arrival. Senator Negron's plan will go nowhere. And it did pass. Concessions were made, but at least we had something to move forward with. And in 2018, when this crisis happened, it was a huge wake-up call for everybody. At that point, when the city of Sanibel, there were businesses that were 60-80% down, for the month. At that point, nothing was going to be good enough. People wanted action now. And as a community, we rallied. It happened really at Chris said if there was a silver lining to it, which is really hard to imagine, it happened right in the middle of a very important election. No politician could do anything other than talk about the water when there's bulldozers and dump trucks on our beaches that should have been full of tourists. They had to answer to the public. The public was mad, and it became the #1 issue. It was polling the #1 issue in the state of Florida in 2018. So what that resulted in is, when Governor DeSantis got elected, this was his number one issue he campaigned on. He came into office, and on his second day, which was just over a year ago last week, he signed an executive order, his second day in office, that laid out a plan. These issues are really hard politically. So coming up front and saying these are the things we're going to do over the next 4 years is often a really good strategy, and that's what he did. Last year we got record funding from the Florida legislature for Everglades restoration and water quality projects, $658 million. We're ahead of session meeting with representatives, and they're saying, no way, that you're not getting that money. That's, where's it going to come from? And a million other excuses. It ended up happening, and that's because so many people paid attention. We got really good news the end of 2019. SERP has been funded at the anticipated levels 2 of the last 20 years. The year it was passed, 2000, and then last year, because everybody was demanding that funding level. So in December, we got a call, hey, the House and the Senate have struck a budget deal. The $200 million ended up going through. It happened right in the middle of impeachment week. We had not really expecting that with all the chaos up there, but it happened. Everglades got the money. Huge success. Because without that money, all these restoration projects like the reservoir, like SEP, they don't move forward. It costs money to build them. They're massive, large-scale projects that are ultimately going to benefit the 8 million Floridians that live in the greater Everglades, as well as all the businesses outside of the state that depend on these estuaries or beaches to make their living. So that progress happened only because people like yourselves were paying attention and demanding change. And it's something that now we have momentum. We're building momentum by the day. We're getting attacked by the day. Just this morning, somebody sent me an article. It came out that so actually, there's a little bit of background to the story. Our agriculture commissioner, Nikki Fried, had appointed a couple of special industry lobbyists to a board that works on the management of Lake Okeechobee, and we had sent a letter saying, it's probably an oversight. Thanks for everything else you've done for the Everglades, but could you please take these few people off? And this morning, I start getting all these texts, and there's a headline that comes out from some fake news thing that's Captains for Clean Water spotted
clubbing.
Yeah, clubbing with lobbyists.
We go clubbing a lot.
Yeah, I have, not recently, not since Captains for Clean Water has been around, but I'm looking at this, and it's a picture of me staring into space, bored out of my mind, in the middle of the day at a restaurant drinking water with the owner of Bailey's General Store on Sanibel, and one of our friends. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, this is clubbing, I guess. So I'm not sure who the lobbyists were, but I'm sure they were clubbing too.
Maybe they meant you were in the lobby of somewhere.
It could have been. It could have been. So yeah, I mean that's something that we deal with on a daily basis. Attacks. There's some people that are not happy with the progress that's being made, and they do everything they can to try to slow down the progress that we're collectively making. It's not going to work. I mean, it's our supporters get fired up when they see stuff like that. It gets them more engaged. But it's always entertaining. One day we're going to do a collage of all the fake news headlines that came out. It'll be entertaining. I promise. There's been some. That's not even the funniest of all of them. But no, I mean it's something that we're going to keep charging hard on this. We're going to keep getting more people involved. The federal funding component to Everglades restoration is huge. And to do that, we need support all across the country.
Yeah, and that's a good point to talk about that. Think about if, in order to get these projects done, we need to get them done faster. Like Daniel said, we're 20 years into something that was supposed to take 30 years. It's not happening fast enough. In order to get it done quickly, and you're talking about massive construction projects, you have to be able to know that the next phase of that project is funded. Think about if you were building a house, and when you first started, you knew that the foundation was funded, and then you had to wait 2 more years to get money to build the walls, and then you weren't sure if whether or not, and then you got a little bit of money to build part of the roof. You know what I mean? It would just take forever. It's no different. So making sure that we have reoccurring funding to drive these projects is important. Is it expensive? Yes. But the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets. And we're talking about, you know, the total suite, the entire thing now being, you know, what is it? How many billions of dollars is it for
16.
16 plus billion? Well,
And the important thing with that, though, is when SERP was passed in 2000, it was an estimated $8 billion. So by delaying, by waiting, we've doubled the price tag of it. And if we delay and wait more, it's going to double it again. But the demand for the projects is only going to increase. So we can't walk away from it. It's something that the sooner you do it, it's never going to be cheaper than it is right now to do these.
Yeah, and we shouldn't walk away from it. You know, our tourism and
which is
boating
a $70 billion a year industry in Florida.
$70 billion a year. I mean, it's an investment in the future of our communities and the future of our economy here in Florida. But, you know, I'd say the good news is, you know, when we started this, it was overwhelming. The good news is now there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We do know that we can fix these things. We do know that we can finish the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, and we will. The challenges are, it's not going to happen overnight. There's no silver bullet. And the challenge with our community is keeping us all engaged, right? It's easy to be engaged and vocal when we've got whale sharks washing up on Sanibel Beach. But thanks to the Army Corps' deviation from their normal Lake Okeechobee management last year and a little less rain from Mother Nature, our waters are beautiful, as Mayor Ruane can attest. I mean, we were out on the island this weekend for the Everglades Coalition Conference, and it was absolutely gorgeous out there. That's when we have the tendency to get complacent, and that's what the real challenge is, and that's where all of us play a role, is making sure that we are just as vocal and holding our policymakers and the people who hold the key to fixing these things, to holding their feet to the fire when our waters are beautiful. And hopefully, that's the case far more often than not, because none of us want to go through another 2018.
Yeah, and it's all right, I said it before, I'll say it again. If we're going to continue this momentum, which we are, it's going to take support from all entities, individual citizens, business groups, local governments. Mayor Ruane from Sanibel has led the charge as far as local governments go with this issue. The state government, the federal government. It takes everybody all pull in the same direction to continue to get these projects funded and built. The one thing we know about government is if you don't watch what they do, they won't do anything productive. So you got to keep pushing them, got to keep charging them. There's so many different people that get involved with these issues that and none of them have the perspective that all of us have who have actually had to suffer through these disasters. We talk about like the Army Corps of Engineers coming up with ideas like, oh, let's drill holes in the ground and start pumping all of the polluted water into the aquifers or below the aquifers. It's like, well, they live in Jacksonville, not where they're talking about doing this. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Especially when the scientists are sitting there scratching their heads and saying, well, why don't you just do the plan that's been here for 20 years? It's really important that everybody here that's affected are the ones that are leading the charge.
Yep. And, when we were first starting this, and this is not a knock on our communities, on ourselves as well, it's kind of like, fingers crossed, let's not bring a lot of attention to this, it'll pass. That's kind of like a really short-sighted mindset that we had that was also derived from the fact that we didn't see an outcome. We didn't see a way out. It's obvious now that by pushing, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's also talking about not losing momentum or getting complacent doesn't mean talking catastrophe. It means talking progress. It's like, hey, this place is this special and this valuable to us that we choose to live here. And it's this special and this valuable that people come from all around the world to experience what we have right here in our backyards. So when we say it's important to keep this as part of the conversation, it's not keep doom and gloom. It's keep the conversation that there is hope, it's fixable, and it's going to happen because we're paying attention. You know,
and on that note, I mean, you know, just to kind of put all the time in perspective, we were going through our stuff from our old office the other day, and we came across a letter that was written in 1991 to, at the time, Mayor Wilbur Smith, that was a concerned citizen that was saying, hey, here's this problem with the Lake Okeechobee discharges. Do something about it. The Army Corps is having a meeting. This person had been at South Florida Water Management District. It's an original copy that somebody, a supporter, had mailed to us. That was in 1991. That was a long time after the 1970s and the 1960s newspaper clippings that we found archived from the Stuart News, where people were all upset about it then. That was a long time ago. And think about how much worse our estuaries are compared to even just 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It doesn't get any better until we do something about it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we're going to take some questions here, but I think it's important to kind of keep in mind that the role, a lot of people, probably the number one question we get is, so what can we do? You know, what can I do? What can you do? What can we all do? And I know it doesn't like feel like much, but the most important thing you can do is to be up to speed on how we get out of this, what the problem is, what the solutions are, and the role that our citizens in our community play in driving those solutions, and then talk about that with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, and talk about it in a positive way that, look, we have an opportunity here. The Everglades Restoration Plan is the largest ecosystem restoration plan suite of projects ever to be undertaken in the world. That is extremely significant. And we have the opportunity to set the benchmark here in Florida to not only save our communities, but to save a national treasure, the Everglades, that will set the benchmark for the rest of the world. That if we can do this, we can solve all these other problems. And we all know there is no shortage of water quality problems, not only in Florida, but across the country and around the world. That, keeping that in your conversation is what we talk about here as cultural change. That's how cultural change happens. We go and speak to groups like you. We go and speak to second graders, third graders, fourth graders, all the way up to college level kids. Because in order to really
I did a presentation the other night. I think the average age was about 110.
Yeah, there you go. But that cultural change is important to keeping that momentum, right? There's a lot of us in here. You know, I'm 43 years old, I think. Wife, yep, 43. So, but when I was a kid, it wasn't like the norm that everybody recycled. Like it wasn't, everybody didn't have a recycling bin and a trash bin. It wasn't the normal thing. I had a lot of friends who did, my parents did, but it wasn't like just the normal thing for society. Today it is, and that's cultural change, and that starts with all of us making that happen. So water quality and the importance of water quality, not only to our economy, but our way of life. The way we're going to sustain that into eternity is through that cultural change and cultural awareness, and that's the role that everybody plays. That's the role each one of us plays. So is there other things? Yeah, when there's a need, you know, to contact a representative, if we're trying to get funding from Washington or a bill pushed through, sure. That's when, you know, we try to make it easy and say, hey, here's this form on our website. We need your help now. But in between those times, the biggest thing we can do is talk about it and make it a point to our friends, our family, and everybody else to make it a topic of conversation as well. You know, that's what drives our policymakers. Like Daniel said, during the last election, it didn't matter if you were running for school board. People were saying, what are you going to do about water quality? You know, these people are going, I'm just running for school board. But that's important. That's how we're going to drive progress. This is a nonpartisan issue. It does not matter what party you're from. It does not matter what country you're from, what ethnicity you are. This is a human issue, and it's our responsibility as humans to fix it. We got into this situation because of man-made problems. We're going to get out of it because of man-made ingenuity and will. So if you want, we'd be happy to answer any questions, whether it's about Everglades restoration or anything else, fishing.